57 years. 57 years, my parents loved each other through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. They were there for one another and always there for us. So my family has had to deal with COVID in a major way. We haven't even been able to put my mother to rest because of COVID. First Sergeant Alethea Ellegor. I am the First Sergeant for HSC Brigade, 3rd ABCT, here at Fort Bliss. Approximately the end of February, I got an emergency Red Cross message stating that my mother was in respiratory failure. And it was the same time or the same week when that occurred that they had set up the exception to policy in order for travel movement. So when my mother first was admitted into the hospital, I had to wait several days before the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army authorized my movement to be able to go home. Luckily at that time, she, recovered. She had fluid in her lungs, and they were able to give her, medical treatment where she was released from the hospital. So when I requested to go home, I was allowed to go and I was able to see her. However, she was readmitted into the hospital about 3 weeks later, unexpectedly. And the stop movement was still in place. And so you could not leave or go more than 100 miles from Fort Bliss due to COVID-19. And if you did, you were automatically quarantined for 14 days. April 16th, I got a call from my daughter, and she was crying and upset. And so when the phone first rang, my first reaction was like, no, don't tell me. And she was like, no, they just said that they believe grandma is in multi-organ failure. And that she's not gonna make it. And so that was the first time that I was notified that my mom possibly wasn't gonna make it. And so I immediately called my dad and to ask him where he was, and he had to pull over on the side of the road because he was so upset. My parents have been married for 57 years. They met when they were 14 and they got married at the age of 17. There are 4 of us, myself, my sister, my older brother, and my younger brother. I called my dad, and my dad called me and my sister on three-way and said that the hospital had called him and told him that they were going to put my mom on a ventilator. And my dad expressed that my mom did not want excessive measures or extensive measures to be given to her because that's not how she wanted to live. So my dad told the hospital, if you put her on the ventilator and it's going to turn her around within 96 hours, then I'm willing to do it. But if it's not, then don't do it. And so the doctor told my dad at that time, well, it's not going to help her. So all we can do is make her comfortable at this point. Later that day, the hospital called my dad and said, okay, they're gonna allow 2 visitors a day. So they tested my mom for coronavirus, and they said if she was not positive, they would allow visitors to come and see her as they made her comfortable. So they tested her, she was negative. My mom did not have COVID-19. And at that point, the visitation was open. So my dad and my daughter went to go visit my mom on Friday, April 17th. And she was there in the hospital. My daughter called myself and my sister on three-way, on duo, and we were able to see my mom. And my dad was there with her. He was kissing her forehead. He was rubbing her head. He was like, I'm here, babe, I'm here. And my mom, we just kept saying, we love you, mommy, we love you. During that time, the doctor came in, and the doctor began to explain to us what was going on. And she told us that my mom's health had quickly and rapidly declined since the day prior, and even more so since earlier that morning. She had a little oxygen thing up her nose, and the doctor said that she was not breathing, or her breathing was impaired. And so as we were talking to the doctor, and she was explaining to us that she came in at 1 o'clock, and she spoke to my mom and told my mom that my dad would be there at 5 o'clock. And so my mom said, okay. She was verbal or able to speak at that time. By the time we got on the call, my dad arrived at 1700 hours on Friday, April 17th. My mom held on. And then at 1724, my mom took her last breath. My sister and I were able to be on video chat with her and be there with her. My dad and my daughter were holding her hand, and she waited for my dad. She held on so that she could say her goodbyes to her lover, her best friend, her confidant, the father of her kids. 57 years, my parents loved each other through the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. They were there for one another and always there for us. So my family has had to deal with COVID in a major way. We haven't even been able to put my mother to rest because of COVID. There's no traveling. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and there's no traveling in or out of the city of New York due to COVID-19. New York is a hot spot. And because of that, a lot of our family members are still in New York. So as of this date, as of today, May 5th, 2020, my mom has not had a memorial service. She wanted to be cremated. She did not want to be buried traditionally with a funeral, but we are unable to come together as a family and grieve because of COVID-19. So we're all where we are. I'm here at Fort Bliss, Texas. My sister's in Brooklyn, New York. I have a brother in South Carolina and another brother in Georgia, and my dad is in North Carolina. So we're all spread out, and we've all had to use social media to communicate with one another and to try to grieve this process. My takeaway from COVID-19 is that life is short. You never know when your loved one is going to be here or when they're not going to be here. Nobody's promised tomorrow. So I encourage all of you, if you're having differences with your family, your loved ones, that is menial, is trivial. Put those things aside, make right whatever wrongs have been done. Apologize, forgive one another, love one another, because unlike us, we showed my mom our love. She got her roses while she was alive. So there are no regrets. She lived a long and beautiful life. She had 10 grandchildren, 6 great-grands, and 1 on the way. My daughter is pregnant and she's due this month. So my mom would have 7 grandsons. But she won't be here physically to celebrate with us the addition to the family. But I'm grateful and I'm glad that she's at peace now and that she's no longer in pain and she's no longer hurting. But I will tell you, COVID-19 puts a lot of things in perspective. The things you take for granted, the opportunities that you think are going to be there, you just automatically assume that all your life, your parents have always been there. You never, even though you know it can happen, you're never really prepared for it, even when it does happen. So use COVID-19 as an opportunity to forgive one another, to reconcile differences, and to come together as a family. Make right, make amends, because once they're gone, no amount of apology is going to matter.